There's something sitting in almost every Australian fridge right now. It's on the top shelf, usually in a yellow or gold wrapper, and most people grab it without a second thought. It goes on the toast in the morning, it goes into the scrambled eggs, it gets spread across sandwiches for the kids' lunchboxes. Australians have been buying it for years. Some families have been buying the same brand for decades. And the assumption is always the same. It's butter. Simple, natural, just cream, and maybe a little salt. That's what the packaging suggests. That's what the name implies. That's what the marketing has always told you. But here's what most Australians don't actually check when they're standing in the dairy aisle at Coles. They don't flip the product over. They don't read the ingredient list. They don't notice that what's printed on the front of the packet, the word butter, the image of rolling green hills, the promise of pure and natural goodness, doesn't always match what's printed on the back. And the back is where the story really begins. This video is not about telling anyone what to buy or what to avoid. That's not the purpose here. The purpose is something simpler and more important than that. It's about making sure that when you reach into that fridge and pull out what you believe is butter, you actually know what you're holding. Because several of the most popular products sold in Coles right now, products that millions of Australians buy every single week, are not quite what the front of the packet suggests. And once you understand how to read the label, you'll never look at the dairy aisle the same way again. Let's start with a product that's been quietly sitting in Coles for years, and one that most shoppers reach for almost on autopilot. The Coles Buttery Blend Spread. 500 grams, soft, spreadable, easy to use, straight from the fridge, and marketed as the convenient, everyday choice for Australian families. The name sounds like butter. The gold packaging looks like butter. And the price, sitting comfortably in the mid-range, feels like what you'd expect to pay for butter. But here's what the product actually is. The clue is in the name, and it's a clue that most shoppers miss entirely. The word buttery is doing an enormous amount of work in that product title. Not butter, not pure butter, not even real butter. Buttery, as in butter-like, as in resembling butter. The ingredient list on this product includes vegetable oils alongside dairy cream. It is, by its own definition, a blend. A combination of real butter and processed plant-based oils, engineered to deliver the spreadability that a pure block of butter cannot. And that distinction between a product that is butter and a product that is buttery matters far more than most Australians realize when they toss it into the trolley. The Coles website lists this product as being made in Australia from 73% Australian ingredients, which raises a straightforward question that the label never quite answers directly. What makes up the other 27%? When you look at what's inside a butter blend like this, you're looking at canola oil or similar vegetable oils, which are introduced specifically to keep the product soft at refrigerator temperatures. Pure butter sets firm when cold. Blended products stay soft because the oils don't solidify the same way. The convenience is real, but the product is not the same thing as butter, and the packaging doesn't make that clear in the way it arguably should. Now move a couple of shelves along in the Coles dairy aisle, and you'll find a product that many Australians consider a step up, something with a bit more credibility. A name they associate with Australian dairy and quality. Devondale Dairy Soft Spreadable Butter Blend. 500 grams, with a label that speaks to a long history in Australian dairy, that references double-churned butter, and that positions itself as a deliciously creamy choice for everyday spreading. The word butter is prominent. The word dairy is in the name. And for most shoppers, that combination is enough. But Devondale Dairy Soft is also, by its own labeling, a butter blend. It contains butter, real, churned dairy cream butter. But it also contains canola oil, because without that addition, it simply would not spread from the fridge the way the product promises. The butter and the oil are combined in the manufacturing process to create something with the taste profile of butter and the spreadability of a margarine. It is not a margarine. That's an important distinction, but it is also not pure butter. Devondale's own website describes it as a butter blend, and that's exactly what it is, a blend. And the question every shopper should be asking is whether they understood that when they chose it over a standard block of pure butter. The salt-reduced version of the same product is marketed heavily toward health-conscious consumers. The front label emphasizes that it contains 40% less salt than the original. For shoppers watching their sodium intake, that sounds like a meaningful health choice, and it may well be in terms of sodium. But the base product, the blend of butter and canola oil, the combination of dairy fat and processed vegetable fat, remains the same regardless of how much salt has been adjusted. The headline benefit on the front label draws attention away from the broader composition of what's inside. This is a pattern worth understanding because it appears across almost every spreadable product in the butter section at Coles. The front of the packet highlights one attribute. It's spreadable, it's lighter, it's salt-reduced, it's organic, and that attribute becomes the thing shoppers think about. The full ingredient composition stays in the fine print on the back, where most people never look. Which brings us to one of the most recognized names in the Coles dairy aisle, and one of the most interesting cases when it comes to the gap between brand perception and product reality. Lurpak, specifically the Lurpak Spreadable, slightly salted, available in both 250-gram and 400-gram formats at Coles, and consistently one of the more premium-priced products in the entire butter section. Lurpak has an extraordinary reputation. The brand is Danish. It has been made to the same standard since 1901. The silver and blue packaging is one of the most distinctive in the world, and in Australia, it commands a price premium that places it noticeably above most domestic competitors. Shoppers who buy Lurpak are in most cases buying it because they believe they're getting something better, something purer, something worth paying more for. And for the block version, the classic Lurpak slightly salted or unsalted block, that perception has a strong basis. The block is butter, pure cream, lactic culture, salt. That's it. But the spreadable version is a different product. The ingredient list for Lurpak Spreadable Slightly Salted reads butter 64%, canola oil, water, lactic culture, salt, vitamin D. More than a third of what's in that tub is not butter. Approximately 26% is canola oil. The same refined vegetable oil that appears in the much cheaper domestic blends is present in the premium-priced Lurpak Spreadable at a higher proportion than many shoppers would ever guess. The Lurpak name, the premium price, and the butter imagery on the packaging create an expectation that the product inside is closer to pure butter than it actually is. That's not a unique criticism of Lurpak. The same structural reality applies to virtually every spreadable product in the category. But the price premium makes it particularly worth examining. A shopper paying significantly more for Lurpak Spreadable because they believe they're buying a superior, purer product should be aware that what they're actually getting is butter blended with canola oil. The same basic formula as the much cheaper options on the same shelf. The Lurpak Softest Spreadable takes this further. This is Lurpak's most spreadable variant, designed to come out of the fridge even softer and easier to apply than the standard spreadable version. The trade-off, visible on the ingredient list, is that the butter content drops to 55%. Nearly half of the product, in some formulation data available from Lurpak's own Australian listings, is canola oil and other additions. The butter content has been reduced to create the softness. The price has not reduced correspondingly. For a shopper who picks up the Lurpak Softest because they want the most convenient spreading experience and they trust the Lurpak name to guarantee quality and purity, this is worth knowing. The softest version is the furthest from pure butter of anything in the Lurpak range. The name softest refers to the texture, not to a gentler formulation. The softness comes from a higher proportion of oil to butter, and that's information the front label doesn't volunteer. Now step back and look at the Coles dairy aisle from a wider perspective, because there's something else happening here that goes beyond individual products. There's a category-wide naming pattern that creates consistent confusion among shoppers, and it's worth understanding before you read any label in this section again. The terms butter, butter blend, dairy blend, spreadable, and buttery spread are not interchangeable. They describe meaningfully different products. Pure butter must, under FSANZ food standards, contain at least 80% milk fat. A product labeled as a blend or a dairy blend, is combining that butter with vegetable oils to achieve spreadability or reduce cost, or both. A spreadable product may or may not be pure butter. The mainland Buttersoft, for example, is a pure butter product that achieves its spreadability through a triple churning process without adding oils, but many spreadable products in the Coles range are blends. And a buttery spread is telling you very directly, in its name, that it is not butter. The problem is that these distinctions don't translate easily to the average shopping experience. When you're pushing a trolley through a busy Coles on a Saturday morning with a list to get through and kids to manage, you're not reading fine print. You're reading the front of the pack. You're looking at the big letters that say spreadable or dairy soft or buttery blend, and your brain is filling in the gaps based on what you've always assumed these products are. Butter. Just butter in a softer, more convenient format. That assumption is exactly what the category relies on, and it's exactly what the front label of the Coles Spreadable Dairy Blend 750-gram tub does nothing to correct. This product, the big family-sized tub that represents extraordinary value for money on a per-gram basis, is positioned as the economical choice for larger households. The word dairy in the name does real work in terms of perception. Shoppers associate it with natural, dairy-based goodness. And some of the product absolutely is dairy, but the blend part means vegetable oils are in there too, in a proportion that the front of the pack doesn't disclose, and that most shoppers buying a big tub for a busy household never think to check. The size of the product compounds this. When you're buying a 750-gram tub, the implicit message is that this is a staple, a household essential, something you go through quickly and buy regularly, which means a family that hasn't read the full ingredient list and doesn't understand what a dairy blend actually is, could be consuming significant quantities of this product weekly, under the impression they're eating butter without ever realizing the distinction. That brings us to the last product worth examining closely, and it's one that sits at the other end of the pricing spectrum, from the big Coles dairy blend tub, Western Star Spreadable Original. Western Star is by virtually any measure the most recognized butter brand in Australia. It has won awards, it has been in Australian kitchens for a very long time. The red and gold packaging is immediately familiar, and for shoppers who grew up with Western Star, the brand association with quality and Australian dairy authenticity is deep and genuine. The Western Star Original Block, the classic foil-wrapped block of salted butter, is pure butter. It's real, it's straightforward, and it earned the brand the loyalty that millions of Australians still feel when they see that red and gold in the dairy aisle. But the Western Star Spreadable Original is a different product in the same family clothing. Like every other spreadable product in the category, it achieves its fridge-soft texture through the addition of canola oil to the base butter. The brand trust built over decades on the back of a pure butter product extends in most shoppers' minds to the spreadable version. And in many ways, it should, because the product isn't misrepresenting itself. If you look at the label, it does say what's in it. But the question is whether most shoppers, seeing Western Star, seeing Original, seeing that familiar packaging, actually look at the label at all. For most, the brand reputation does the work that a label check would otherwise do. And that's really the core of everything this video has been about. Not that any of these products is hiding something illegal. Not that any of them has done something wrong in any regulatory sense. FSANZ, the Food Standards Authority for Australia and New Zealand, has clear rules about how these products can be labelled, and every product mentioned here operates within those rules. What's being examined here is something different from legality. It's the gap between what a shopper perceives and what a product actually is. That gap exists because the naming conventions in this category are genuinely confusing. It exists because front-of-pack marketing emphasizes the attributes that sound best: spreadable, dairy, soft, original, natural, without foregrounding the full composition. And it exists because most shoppers have never had any reason to question what they've always assumed was a simple, natural product. Butter used to be butter. You bought it, it was hard. You let it sit on the bench for a bit. You spread it. The category has evolved significantly since then, and the evolution has produced products with genuinely useful properties. spreadability, lower sodium, lighter fat content that many consumers legitimately want. None of that is a problem in itself. The question is whether the consumer making that choice is doing so with a full understanding of what they're selecting. Reading a label in the dairy aisle takes about 30 seconds. Flipping a tub over, finding the ingredient list, and checking whether the first 2 or 3 ingredients are cream, salt, and nothing else, or whether canola oil appears in a significant position. That's all it takes to know exactly what you're buying. If you see cream and salt, and that's the whole list, you have pure butter. If you see vegetable oils, canola oil, or any plant-based fat listed alongside the cream, you have a blend, and you can make your choice accordingly. Neither product is inherently wrong for every person, but the choice should belong to the shopper, made with real information, not to the front-of-pack marketing. The next time you're at Coles and you're standing in front of that dairy fridge, the gold and red and blue labels all lined up and looking more or less the same from a distance, take 30 seconds. Flip the product over. Read what's actually in it. Because the difference between what you think you're buying and what you're actually buying might be smaller than you'd expect, or it might be larger. Either way, you deserve to know. And once you start reading those labels, you'll never stop. Because once you know what to look for, you'll see it everywhere. Not just in the butter aisle, in the bread aisle, in the dairy section, in the snack foods and the breakfast cereals and the ready meals. The gap between what a label promises and what a product delivers is one of the most consistent features of the modern Australian supermarket. And it closes the moment you stop trusting the front of the packet and start reading the back. That's what informed shopping looks like. Not fear, not avoidance, just information. Just knowing what's actually in the product you're buying, so that the choice you make at the checkout is genuinely yours.